It is the Beaver Banter Podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, Ian Rivers, my co-host. And Ian, let's get right to it. Your Bemidji State Beavers are MacNaughton Cup champions.
Yes, sir. It's a great day to be a Beaver.
It's so great.
There's not been too many better days out there to be a Beaver than right here, right now, owning the MacNaughton Cup.
She's home.
What a weekend, man! What a weekend.
I mean, we knew that it was like pretty much within our grasp. The way that they played St. Thomas, you're like, okay, they put themselves in such a good position that it was going to, like, the probability is that they're going to win the MacNaughton Cup. But as we talked about last week on the podcast, and as we talked about with Lucas last week of Beaver territory, we were just like, though, it's Mankato, and like, you can't take them lightly, even after how they are expected to be bad, and they played better than everybody expected them to all throughout the season. Like, just the way this rivalry is gone. And Bemidji State just played a 0-0 first period on Friday night. They scored 5 goals in the second period, 6 goals, 5 goals. I mean,
yeah, 5 in the second period.
5 in the second period. They put a couple more on for good measure in the third period. And then they win the MacNaughton Cup. And there's the fanfare that, and Don Lucia's at the Sanford Center and says to be the man, you got to beat the man. And everybody's going crazy. And then you think, okay, cool. Then on Saturday night, like, that was the emotions. Now Saturday night, Mankato will probably get theirs, and we'll go home, and everybody will have gotten what they wanted out of the weekend. But, and especially with Enright starting in net, no, shutout, boom. Bemidji State takes all the points this weekend and puts Mankato down in the standings, and the Roll Tom's account was officially a Bemidji State account over the weekend.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of Beaver fans across the CCHA, and a lot of them were Michigan Tech fans. And like I said to some of those accounts, I hope you know that the roles were reversed last season when Michigan Tech was in this place. We're rooting for anybody and everybody to take down Minnesota State and end that streak. And the Beavers were able to finally do it. Like you said, man, I mean, the atmosphere up in Bemidji was absolutely amazing. No, it wasn't sold out, but it was damn good compared to what we've seen a lot this season. And I'm not going to sit here and bark at the attendance issues. It is what it is. We had a good crowd there, and honestly, like, being in the tavern before the game, obviously, anybody that doesn't know, it's the bar that's like connected to the Sanford Center. Seeing all the people in there, getting ready, getting hyped up for the game. I spoke to a couple of Jackson Judding's buddies from high school down in Prior Lake that came up to support him, to see him play in this game. And then he scored. He showed them the love by scoring the first 2 goals, which was awesome. He had 4 points on Friday night, CCHA Forward of the Week, which was fantastic. Dude, I can't stress enough how much I love this fourth line either. Like, every night they do something absolutely phenomenal. And it's just, they're not even playing like a decent fourth line. Like, Chittenden made an absolutely insane pass. It was the 6th goal, so it's the least talked about because it's already out of hand. But the poke pass that Reese Chittenden had to Adam Flamang out of the corner, he's like on his knees. He just got up off the ice on his knees, thrusts his stick forward, poke passes it perfectly to Flamang, who puts it past Keenan Rancier at that point, because Alex Chasey, because we chased his ass after the 4th goal. I mean, it was awesome. And of course the Dante Lawson goal, assisted by who else but Reese Chittenden and Jake McLean. They played out of their mind. I don't know if you call it the second or the third line. Maybe it's the third line, but I don't know if they really care that much. Those 2 lines are kind of interchangeable. Jackson Judding, obviously, with 2 goals. Casper Magnuson. I love Casper Magnuson, dude. He's another freshman. Celebrates each goal like it's the last one he's ever going to score. Brent Cizek, the photographer, if you don't follow him on Twitter, go give him a follow, because he's a great photographer and he gets some good photos. And the photos of Casper on his knees on the ice, like he just won the Olympics or something after that 3rd goal, is just amazing. Just a super, super exciting game. And then, yeah, you're right. Like, you go into Saturday and you're like a little bit bummed out because, there's nothing on the line now. It's not like you were hoping to lose so that there would be a better game on Saturday. But, it's like, all right, let's just see if we can come out and play spoiler. Enright's going to get the start, which is awesome that they were able to do that because, God knows they probably wouldn't have started Gavin Enright if they were still in a position to win the cup or to be able to need to win it. Jack Powell got the start, a defenseman that's only played now 20 games in his career for BSU, but he's put in the effort. And he played as the extra skater in that Saturday game as well. So it was cool to be able to get those guys that. And yeah, like you said, a shutout back-to-back nights, the first time BSU has ever shut out Mankato back-to-back games in the history of the program. And it's just like him to do it. Mitch Wolf getting his first goal as a Beaver. That was awesome to see. It was, like I said, one hell of a pass from Jake McLean. Like he's on the boards and he throws it through 5 bodies perfectly to a streaking Mitch Wolf at the back post and just taps it in. And then who else but Casper Magnuson? Polkamp shot. I don't know. This is maybe a little bit casual of me, but I'm not sure how long a hockey rink is. But Polkamp shot it the entire way of the ice, trying to get the empty net goal. And Mankato at that point was just so defeated. Lucas posted the clip on Twitter of Evan Murr just casually strolling down the ice. Magnuson sprinting down there, gets it back and tucks it in, and then gives the ear to the crowd. Like, just what a weekend, man. Like, not only to do it, but to do it like that, 6-0 against the evil Empire, 6 MacNaughton Cups in a row, to be able to take that from them, that was awesome. That was really awesome.
I mean, it's great. It's great for a multitude of reasons. One, it's always good to beat Mankato. It's always good to beat Mankato in the way you did. You flat out embarrassed them. And obviously, we're kicking them a little bit while they're down. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, Mankato fans will be the first to tell you that, like, they're still pretty happy of where their season went, considering they had a mass exodus of players. Their coach left. Like, they weren't necessarily at their full strength, but that doesn't matter to us. We should have did that. We should have took care of business, and we did. And I can't remember what the stat was, but Bemidji State over the last couple of years now against Mankato has had their number. They've been able to play pretty darn well against the Mavs, and especially down in Mankato. So it's things like that where I'm not saying that, it's forever shifted, but for it to be a rivalry, you have to kind of go back and forth. And Bemidji State able to do that against Mankato. And it's not Mankato's on the rebuild right now. They're trying to go through some things. They're obviously, that infrastructure is still pretty good. They're not going away, but it was a good thing for Bemidji State to punch them in the face and say, it's not your year. This is our year. We're going to do some stuff. And would they have won the MacNaughton Cup? It would have been unlikely. They would have gotten there. But just the fact of you didn't even give them any hope in that series. Outside of the first period of the first game, they maybe had some life. But after that, they sucked the life out of Mankato, and they just did not want to be in Bemidji that entire weekend. Like you talked about on that empty netter, Mankato couldn't get on the bus fast enough to get back down south. And that's the fun part. You didn't just beat them. You handled them. And Bemidji State, there's been the talk about Tech and Bowling Green being some of the better teams in the conference over the last month, and they've been playing good hockey. But Bemidji State's got to be right there with them, especially after a performance they had over the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, Bemidji State is one of the hottest teams, not only in the conference. Obviously, they're the hottest team in the conference right now. But
funny how when they get fully healthy, they suddenly play like a great team.
Yeah, dude. Like, nobody wants to play this team right now. And obviously, we've still got work to do, right?
Yeah,
Check one is done on the to-do list. Get the MacNaughton Cup. Now, obviously, we're going to be talking about the Mason Cup. And we'll have more of that, by the way, tomorrow in tomorrow's episode, because we will be recording another episode this week with Lucas Pipenhagen. He's coming back to do what he did last year with us and preview the CCHA tournament,
and
the Mason Cup playoffs. Yeah, and last week. But, we're
2-0 since Lucas has been on here. So, we've got to keep it going. Superstition.
Yeah, I mean, like 6 wins in a row, dude. Like, this is nuts. Since that Northern Michigan series started over a month ago now, like in the last month, Bemidji State is 7-0-1. Who would have thought coming down the stretch with how the beginning of the season went. Yeah, so we're getting healthy. Cool. I would have thought there would have still been a couple losses in there, and it would have been a lot
Right.
closer. You look at the standings at the end of the day, we won by 9 points. That's got to be the biggest margin of anything. Like, besides Ferris at the bottom of the conference, that's the biggest number I've seen, in the middle there. So just like I said, man, it was awesome to see the way that you did it against Mankato. Man, I mean, I don't have enough words. Like, it's probably one of the best sports weekends like I've experienced as a Beaver fan. Obviously, the whole weekend at the Chet last season was super cool, but I mean, it's probably on about the same level. It's championship on the line against Mankato. And yeah, they didn't even, you brought up, they didn't look like they had life. Like, Sam Morton, one of the top coming into the weekend, at least, I think he was 4th in the NCAA in goals with 22.
For
He didn't
Mankato.
he didn't even get a good look. I didn't even notice that he was on the ice on Friday. Saturday, he was a little bit more active, but even then, like, I was going to look up and see if I could figure out how many shots BSU blocked this weekend. I don't know
There
if
was
they
a
put
lot.
that. Yeah, I don't know if they put that in the box score, but dude, like, 16 blocked shot. Okay, that's Mankato. 23 blocked shots on Friday night.
Mhm.
23. They're selling out to block these pucks, and let's tab over to Saturday night. Let's take a look. 20. So 43 block shots on the weekend. Unbelievable. They just, it was almost too easy for Matthias Scholl. Enright made some fantastic saves at the end of that game to keep it a shutout, but it was just dominant. It was so fun. It was dominant. And yeah, I mean, like I said, that's one check mark done, and there's more to do. But the first step is complete. Now you've got that MacNaughton Cup. You've got home ice. Like I said, we'll preview the entire bracket, but Ferris State coming up next weekend. That's who you wanted, because they were
Right.
15 points behind the 7th place team. That's 5 games back, and that's a pretty big difference. And you got home ice throughout the entire Mason Cup playoffs. As long as you keep winning games, they will come to you. The championship game will be at the Sanford Center if you are in it. So that's massive. It can't be understated.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this entire thing with the bracket, and obviously we'll do a full breakdown with Lucas, and we'll go over everything with the tournament, and we'll take a deep dive into that. So I don't want to preview too much. Let's kind of, I mean, Ferris State's the matchup you want. The tournament's going to run through Bemidji, and I think overall, Ian, let's just backtrack a little bit and let's talk about what it was like. And I know we'll talk about this with Lucas later in the week, but what was it like getting to that Sanford Center? Because obviously, there we're wondering, what's the vibe going to be like? Is it going to be, is it going to be packed? Is there going to be nervous energy? Is it going to be whatever? What was the vibe like in that building? You already touched on it a little bit earlier, but let's go into that. What was it like on Saturday or on Friday and Saturday at the Sanford Center?
Friday was awesome. It was very tense. You could feel the tension in the air. Everybody's, nervous. They're wondering if we're going to be able to pull it out, and there's a lot of stuff going on, but the energy was always there. There's good looks left and right. And the floodgates kind of opened on the energy in the building as soon as Judding put in that first goal early in the second period. And then there was that absolute rush. Like, they scored like 3 goals in 3 minutes or something, in the middle of that period. And that was kind of when it got real, when you're like, oh my God, like, I myself got a little nervous because I'm thinking back to that Chargers game, and I hate bringing up the Chargers again, but like, we talked about that like last week. I think, like, man, yeah, we're up 4-0, but like, now it would hurt even more if we blew the lead. You know what I mean? Like, that was there. The 5th goal right at the end of the period, it was Eric Martin who got credit for it, but I can't remember the defender. It basically went off a defender's skate and into the back of the net, and so it's like, all right, we're just getting all the puck luck now. You got to think that this is in the bag at 5-0. So,
The 5-goal lead is the hardest lead to protect in hockey,
yeah, yeah. absolutely absurd. The energy was super, super good in the building. Yeah, oh gosh, I was gonna bring up, you brought up Don Lucia earlier, and we were kind of out of position, I'll say, before the game. We were wandering around, and one of the guys I was with was like, "Hey, I know that guy up in that box up there. Let's go chat with him." So we walk up the stairs to the box, and we're hanging out. It was cool to be able to see the suites up there because I've never actually
They're
been
nice.
upstairs.
I've got to walk
Uh,
up through the press box and stuff like that. It's super nice.
yeah, so that was neat. But and then we just decided, instead of walking straight down the stairs again, let's just walk around up there and see what's going on. And we did end up walking right past Don Lucia on his way to the press box, and I'm like, oh, that was Don Lucia, guys. Like, should we have saluted, or no? I'm kidding, but it was just weird, like seeing all those people in the building. Obviously, the commissioner's going to be there when the MacNaughton Cup's there, so that all made sense. But yeah, it was super cool to be able to do that, and I'm super glad I was there. I'm not going to give you too much shit, man, because I know that you had stuff going on. Life gets in the way. That's totally
I wish
understandable.
I would have been there. Don't get me
But
wrong.
man, I would have been kicking myself, and I missed that one. So I do feel bad. Like it was a fun atmosphere. It was a fun time. So it sucks that you couldn't get up and see it, but who knows? Maybe you'll have some time here in the
if they keep
playoffs.
winning, let's get to I can make it to the Mason Cup finals or something. If they keep winning, let's do it.
Right. And I've got to make my mind up here because, like, this weekend I work. I work every other weekend, so it's a little bit tough for me. It lined up that I had this weekend off. This next weekend I work, so I have the semifinal off, but I also have Fridays off. So the CCHA championship, for those that don't know, is on a Friday evening. So potentially I could sneak up that day and just come back home in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves
Yeah,
here, but
well,
we'll
we'll
see.
cross that bridge when we get to it. But it's fun to think about, and it's we've talked about this before, but it's just such a polar opposite of what this team was a year ago, where they started off really well and faded away, and part of that was because of injuries, and the injury luck was the reverse. Like, we were healthy at the beginning of the year and slowly got worse and worse and worse as the year went on. Whereas this year, it's like there was not a lot of health in the middle of the season, and they slowly got better and better. And obviously that's not the entire story. They just didn't play well either. But when you didn't have your starting goalie for a good chunk of that first third of the season, maybe that middle kind of patch of the season, that definitely hurt when you don't have some of your main guys. And even getting Fulmer back for this weekend, it was something that we didn't quite know what happened until they released the line sheets that night.
Mhm. Yeah, no, well, and injuries are another thing to keep an eye on, because Saturday night, I don't know if you had your ear tuned in to
I did
that
not.
game, but
Fill us in.
you could tell Mankato was getting frustrated by the middle of the second period. There was some hits that were tough, and I don't know if any of them are necessarily majors, but I think a major needed to be given out at some point to Mankato, because I think it was starting to get out of hand. And I think even if it's not worthy of a major completely, the refs needed to do a better job getting control of that game. You could tell Mankato was flustered. They hadn't scored a goal all game. Kirkland Irie got hit into the boards, and he did not return to the game. He's the one that we're really concerned about. We have sources, quote unquote, that are not untrustworthy, but you just never know sometimes. So Irie left the game. He's apparently banged up, but doing all right. So we'll see if Irie's back. That would be a big loss, and maybe something we can touch on with Lucas, what they might do to replace him if he were to miss this next weekend. Fulmer took another big blast along the boards late in that game. One that I thought was a little bit dirtier even than the Irie hit, and Fulmer was not moving on the ice for about a good 90 seconds. He did end up getting off, skating off, and then he did end up not returning to the game, but he was on the ice after the game. So that was good to see. And then Will Magnuson vanished from the bench at some point, undisclosed reasons. We don't know why, but apparently it was a precautionary measure. So it's just a little dicey there, playing with 11 forwards and 5 defensemen at the end of the game. We're like, man, this is the one thing you didn't want to see happen, in this game. But I think we'll be all right. Maybe Irie might miss some time, but I guess, not to underestimate Ferris State. If there's going to be a series that you can be without Kirkland Irie for, it's probably Ferris State. But yeah, and then, there's some other things I would have loved to see. Maybe a power play goal. The power play was awful again this weekend, but what are you going to do? We've known that going in, so that wasn't necessarily super shocking. And then I would have loved to see Leighton Road get a goal on Saturday. He and I might bring this up again with Lucas because he had 3 or 4 good chances. Like there was I think it was in the first game after Judding's first goal, in between his first and second, where Road kind of tucked it underneath Tracy and it went between his legs and just kind of sat in front of the goal line. We could see it from where we're sitting. We're like, oh my God, the puck is right there on poke it in. And then it got covered up. And that was Road. He had another one late in that game after it was already in hand where he beat the goaltender and it just kind of skated along that line, hit the post and went out. And he was like, oh, you can tell he's frustrated with the amount of I haven't looked it up and I'll look it up for our next episode, but I think the last goal he scored was in that 4-1 win against Ferris State. And it's been few and far between. And obviously the offense has picked it up, so it's not been an issue. And I don't think that it's really weighing on Leighton's mind. He's still playing hard out there defensively and offensively. That's not an issue. But you can tell he's frustrated every time the puck doesn't go in the net when he shoots it. You can tell. It does weigh on a guy. Walter Payton, one of the greatest running backs of all time, somebody from that Bears team brought up that he was frustrated in that 85 season. He's like one of the best players on the team. They scored like 40 some points in the Super Bowl and he didn't get in the end zone. And yeah, he's a team player. You can tell it weighed on him. So I would have loved to see him kind of get his juice back, get that swagger back before the playoffs. But maybe he's just, maybe it's all just kind of storing up inside and we'll just get a massive outburst here from Leighton in the playoffs. So either way, like that, again, it's a very minor concern. I just would have loved to see him get a goal because he's played really well over the last 2 weekends. It just hasn't paid off in many points for him. So, but either way, I mean, they put up 8 goals on Minnesota State. So can't complain too much about the offense.
All right, one last thing for hockey, and then we'll move on and talk about some of the other sports right now. But I mean, honestly, we could just spend the whole time talking about hockey. That game happened. I mean, the Saturday game was 2 days ago from when we're recording this, and obviously it's been a few days, but we're still kind of juiced up from just that overall weekend. So it's been really fun to talk about, and I can't wait to talk about it with Lucas later on. So be watching out for that episode. But last thing. Ian, make your pitch, get on the soapbox, make your pitch for why anybody in the area or anybody who's considering going to the Sanford Center this weekend, why should they do it?
Well, because it's going to be their best chance to for sure win hockey games, I think, for the rest of the season. You never know what can happen. Obviously, the CCHA playoffs reseed. So if there's an upset, BSU might get another chance to play a lower seed. But it's the playoffs, man. And this is where they need the fans to show up. Obviously, this will be the end now of spring break. I thought the student section looked fine considering the fact that spring break had just started. Technically, it doesn't start until Monday, actually. No, dude, it starts on Friday. That's when the students leave campus. So I was excited to see that at least some of the students had stuck around to go to those games. So get out there. Yeah, absolutely. It's a playoff game. The team's going to need all the support they can get. They appreciate it, dude. After that Saturday game, they did a lap around the ice, saluting all the fans. It was cool to see. They want feeling, and tickets are not that expensive. They're still going to be only $10, I believe. I actually don't know if for playoffs or not, if it's more expensive, but either way, it probably isn't that bad. So yeah, get out there, go see those games, Friday, Saturday. And hopefully not Sunday, but we'll talk about that with Lucas later.
Right. Sanford Center is a world-class facility. Let's get out there. Let's support the Beavs, and let's go. Let's wrap things up. We'll get 2 wins, and we'll go on to the next series, and then it's single game elimination, and then that's where things start to get dicey. But can't get to that until you beat Ferris. So hopefully the boys take care of business on the weekend. Let's talk a little women's hockey. Their season came to a close against Ohio State. A lot to a little, let's just put it that way. And just kind of the story of the season. We don't really need to talk about the playoffs in Ohio State and the WCHA, but overall, last year, I mean, at this time, it was a total mess. A bunch of players left the program. They had to rely on a bunch of young skaters this year. How are we feeling now after a season that win and loss actually looks a little worse if you look at the goal differential, but weirdly enough feels not as worse, or what's the feeling?
Well, we'll see, because like my feeling isn't as bad as the 4-30-2 record seems, because of the fact that they had all those injuries in February. Like they were not skating a full team, and I wonder what they could have done maybe against some of these teams. I'm not saying they would have picked up a win against Ohio State, but you're right. Like the injury bug kind of got us there at the end of the season, put a damper on things, and the way it ended was not fun. But there was some signs of life there, and I think if you can see some players stick around. I think they had like 12 players leave last season in the transfer portal. If we can get that down, like have that number not be 12 this year, not 13 either. I'm watching you. But yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if we can get that number lower, keep some more of these like girls around to gel as a hockey team. Like imagine how hard it is. Yeah, imagine how hard it is getting on the ice those first couple games of the season when you've not played like with each other. Like you've got to find that synergy. I think you saw it with men's hockey this season, and they didn't even have any transfers in or out. Like they were not gelling at the beginning of the season offensively like they are now. Now you finally got the lines put together for the men, and that's another reason why Irie's injury is so because those lines are all playing so well. And with the women, you didn't feel like you ever got a chance to see them. The one time you did was the middle of the season, and they actually played pretty well against Minnesota, St. Thomas, and even UMD. So I think that if you go into next season, you don't maybe have so much movement in the transfer portal, hopefully look for some better results. But yeah, this season ended up being a pretty tough one.
Yeah, it's one that you want to forget, but it's one that you gotta, if you're the players and you're the coaching stuff, like you want to forget kind of some of the bad stuff, but you do have to take with you some of the stuff this season of like getting that on ice time. And like you talked about, they can just stay another year and develop and gel, and things can kind of turn a corner here. And that's the thing, is just got to work up to kind of get to where, like we talk about this all the time, where the teams were at when we were on campus. You weren't in that top echelon, but you could, if Ohio State came to your building and they weren't paying attention, you could come away and steal 3 points from them and things like that. Can we get the program back up to that point? And, getting past that first round and getting down to the face-off down in the cities. Like, can you do that? That's the next level of the program. And we'll have to see. I mean, they have some, like we talked about, they have some young players who did some stuff. The Warroad line was the story all season long. So there's some stuff about this team to like. It's just, obviously they need to get more experience. They need to get a little more talented. They just got to kind of let this process play out, and we'll see how that develops. And the first part is seeing what happens with the vaunted transfer portal. So we'll see what that ends up being officially. Moving on to men's basketball, Ian, their season came to a close as well in the first round of the NSIC playoffs. We talked about it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. It's tough to beat a team twice in a season.
Yeah, the soccer team had no issue, so I have no sympathy for these basketball jockeys.
You're right. Never mind. Yeah,
no, you're right. No, and we didn't really touch on that too much. It is tough. This is the third matchup, and Sioux Falls knows us. Not to cut you off, I'll let you. But
no, you're good.
You're right. Three games against a team, and it sucks. But yeah, continue with your point.
Yeah, I mean, really, just over the course of this game, we talked about, turnovers. We talked about just kind of the consistency in the outside shooting. And, say what you want, but Bemidji State at the end of the game.
Free throws. Got to make your free throws. 2-point game. You missed like 15 free throws. I wonder why you lost.
I mean, it's we talked about it all season long. There was a talented team on the floor every single night at the BSU gymnasium. They are a talented team. When you look at Albrecht, when you look at Sutherland, when you looked on the outside, this was a team with some playmakers. And it's just frustrating because it always felt like it was the little things that got in the way. It was, well, they turned the ball over way too much, or they just had a really bad shooting night, or they couldn't make a free throw. And it's little things like that always seem to get in the way. And yet Bemidji State had a chance at the end of the ball game, And then they gave up a shot at the buzzer by letting a guy go all the way down the floor. And I know that in the moment, I was like, how do you let that guy get all the way down the floor and basically get a layup? You're right, Ian. We talked about this right away post game. Like, it was a tough shot. I'll give him that, but it just never sits well when it just ends up, when it just feels like, I'm not questioning effort. That's not what I'm questioning. It's just more of like, it's just more of like, he was able to do that. He was able, like, to kind of to weave through everybody. I don't know. It's just more frustrations.
The problem wasn't the shot itself. The problem was the penetration, letting him get that deep without like, that was the issue. You let him get into that position where he could make a tough shot, keep him outside the lane. Like, you let him right in, and then it was a good contest, but you walked.
But he was like 6 feet away.
Yeah, it sucks to have your season end on a buzzer beater 2 years in a row. They did play pretty well, like you said. I mean, like, I'm going to attribute it mostly to free throw shooting. You lose a 2-point game and you miss 13 free throws. They shot 14 of 27. That's a huge thing. They weren't even chucking up threes. They only shot 16. Sometimes I think they shoot too many threes. This wasn't one of those cases. 16 threes is a completely, totally, they shot 37%. That's fine. You'll take that. But a 51% free throw shooting. And guess what? We touched on it last week. Sioux Falls is the second easiest place in the conference to shoot free throws in. Like, they have so how the hell did you shoot 51%? That's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, like you said, there's tons of talent on the floor, but it just hasn't panned out. We just never saw it pan out this season. And it's unfortunate because what we saw last season, we kind of thought that we had a good chance to kind of repeat that success and at least get back to the Pentagon. But it never ended up, turning into anything. Sioux Falls did end up falling in a close game to Minnesota State in the quarterfinal round. So, it's not like we only would have lost in the next game anyways. Yeah, you can't think about it like that. It's a tough loss to swallow. I feel gutted for all those guys losing like you did. You tied the game up with what? 10-ish seconds left, maybe a little less. And that's always the worst position to be in, because when you're down, you don't want to wait until the shot clock is running out, or the play clock, I suppose. You don't want to wait for the game clock to be at double zeros before you're putting the ball in the air. You've got to get a good look so that if you miss it, you still have a chance to get a rebound or foul and come back. And they made it, which just meant that USF could then waste all the time on the clock in the tie game and go try to take the lead. And it's a tough position to be put in. They played it right. It's just, you wish that maybe they wouldn't have let them get quite so close. But hell, even last year when they played excellent defense on Moorhead in the last seconds of the game, they made an even tougher fall away shot from beyond the arc, I believe. So it's tough either way.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I get on that final play too. You're not trying to foul him either. Like, you don't, like, it'd be like if they fouled him and we go, oh my gosh, you let him get to the free throw line. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is a balance. I get it. It's just frustrating. It's a frustrating way to have your season end. And looking at some of these final stats, I mean, Bemidji State shot, like you talked about, 52% at the free throw line. The 3-pointers, they shot 37.5. That's not bad. They shot about 43% from the field. I mean, USF was not having, Bemidji State was the better shooting team really overall in that ball game. Bemidji State only had 11 turnovers compared to USF's 8, 7 steals. Bemidji dominated the boards in the ball game. And that's the thing, is it felt like a game where Bemidji State was the better team, except in free throws. And there was a point, I know Bemidji State was up by 16 points. And if you were listening to the announcer, who's obviously like the Sioux Falls announcer, because that's just how the broadcasts work, he kept bringing up how it was a 16-point lead at one spot in the ball game. But when it's in college basketball, when a team is up 16 points, like in the first 8 minutes of the game, I almost don't even, like, in a way, I don't really even consider that a big thing, because there's so much time left in the game. It's like in the NBA when somebody goes, oh, they blew a 20-point halftime lead. Like, well, yeah, I mean, that's easy to blow.
Half of basketball in the NBA, it's like a brand new game. So, like, yeah.
Right.
In college basketball, it's not quite to that scale, but you're right. Like,
there's so much time
in the first half. Yeah. It sucked that it evaporated that quickly, because I I at the gym, I turned it on and I hadn't even known that there was a 16-point game. I turned it on right before half and BSU's already trailing. So letting it evaporate that quickly is a little bit concerning. And obviously, it ended their season. But I think it was a pretty good barometer of where their season ended up this season. Starting off really well. Like I said, we were talking before New Year's, even after New Year's a little bit of how do we get that first round bye into the Pentagon? That was our 16-point lead, and they blew it. They went on a 6-game losing streak. They ended up winning 3 of 4 at one point, winning 3 in a row, and then losing 3 in a row, and then going into the playoffs and sputtering out. So kind of a good parallel with their season as a whole in that game. Coming right down to the end and losing on a buzzer beater, but not fun for them to lose in that fashion. But now you gotta reload because you're losing Sutherland and Albrecht, and it's gonna be tough to replace those players next season.
It's gonna be tough to replace, and I'm trying to pull up the roster here just to see all the seniors on the team. My laptop's being a little slow here, but the season comes to a close. At least at the end of the day, you can look at. There's a couple all conference honors here as I'm waiting for that page to pull up as well. Sutherland and Albrecht both earned all NSIC honors. I'm trying to see if it was first or second team.
Sutherland was first team and Albrecht got second team.
Exactly. And that's
I think Alyssa Hill, we're not going to talk about women's basketball today. Obviously their season ended a week or so ago. Also got second team on the women's side. So
yeah, congratulations to her as well. And that's what, there was some talent with Albrecht and Sutherland, and we knew it. And obviously Albrecht being a senior and, with Sutherland, which I'm looking on here, it says
I'm so confused because it
says he's a junior on the website.
But it said he was a junior last year. So, I mean, you have to imagine, unless he took his COVID eligibility year a year early, which I don't even know if.
Well, it says here on the BSU press release that Sutherland said he ended his junior season. So I think if we get another year of Sutherland, I'll take it.
Maybe I should reach out to him and be like, hey, dude, what year are you in? Because did we get some bad information?
You're like that. You're like that announcer on the for the Denver Nuggets that was on the court, and there's like, hey, hold on, I'll ask you, are you playing? Yeah, that's what Ian.
Yeah, it says 22-23 junior, and then it says 23-24 junior. So I'm very confused. It doesn't seem to make too much sense to me, but we'll see. Maybe they messed something up. So last year was his first year playing for BSU, right?
Let me check. So
I'm pretty sure it was because it says transfer sophomore year. So maybe he used a redshirt year, but they never used it on the website, and so he was actually a sophomore last year. Because I don't know,
because he played one season at Duluth. So
yeah, he played one season at Duluth. So when he got to us, he should have been a sophomore, but I don't remember it. I'm sorry. It's
and
weird.
He shouldn't have had a COVID season because he was there before COVID.
Right.
Because he graduated I think he graduated in 2020. So that's the.
Well, it says he played in sophomore season too. It says he played 24 of 25 games. So
right.
I don't understand
I'm so
why he says it's a junior.
Unless
I feel like he's not coming back unless he does have that COVID year. Because I know in hockey, this is the last year that COVID year is a thing. But I don't know on the Division II basketball side where that stands. So I'll have to defer. We'll get back to you on that. Maybe if we figure something out.
John, if you're listening, please just let us know so we can stop wondering this question. Just leave a comment.
We might have someone we can ask about that. I might know somebody that might know. So
sources, I made it up.
Dude, I made it up.
Really, just I think with the season, there is some things that stood out. I mean, I think Tate Olson ended up becoming like he played a lot of minutes.
Mhm.
I mean, he's not a scorer, but he's tall, he's lanky. They kind of like him on defense. I think that there's some pieces to build. I know Pekarich, he didn't get a ton of time as the season got on, but for a true freshman coming out of Brainerd, he got a little bit of minutes kind of in that middle portion of the season. So you can see some younger players who they're looking to build off of. But I mean, Sutherland and Albrecht were the guys. And it doesn't matter if Sutherland's coming back. Losing Albrecht is going to sting. So that and the biggest thing for Bemidji State, their 3-point shooting was kind of inconsistent. There were a couple guys who we thought this season would pop up and end up kind of taking on that role. And it just, never materialized. And maybe it'll materialize next season, but just never quite got that production that you wanted to get from beyond the arc on a consistent basis that really could have let this team be a dual threat on offense. But I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes. But I don't know, is there anything else you want to say about the basketball team? I think we pretty much have just kind of said what we've said. I mean, overall, it's a competitive season. At least they were fun to follow. I mean, there have been some teams, especially when I was on campus, where they were competitive. They were fun from time to time, but then you look up and they'd only won 8 games throughout the season. So, they still ended up having a nice year, but ultimately you just feel like with the way last year ended, with with a lot of that talent coming back, you just felt like it was a bit of a missed opportunity.
And there was some stuff that happened mid-season, right, that we're not necessarily going to touch on, but I know that there was some stuff that happened with some players or player on the basketball team,
Right.
that might have led to some of this. Okay, so there is that.
Right. And it's tough
Again,
to speculate.
not gonna dive into that, not gonna speculate, but that might have something to do with it. So, yeah, it sucks, but you just never know.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. And whatever. It just is what it is. But at least at the end of the day, you could watch a Bemidji State basketball game more often than not this year and at least be entertained. And I'll take
Right.
that as well. There's a few weeks there where the games were they'll tell you they weren't playing very well, but for most of the season, they still were a fun watch, which I'll take. So let's finish up the podcast, Ian, by talking a little bit about some of the spring sports, because it is March now, believe it or not. So it's felt like March for the last 3 months. It is actually March. So here we go. We are into baseball and softball and women's tennis. And women's tennis got their first victory over Wisconsin River Falls, which is pretty cool. 9-0. That happened yesterday. Softball, 2 days ago. Sorry. Softball, their season's going here as I try and pull up their schedule just to get the numbers right. Do you have it up, Ian?
Yeah, they're playing in Florida right now. They played today and won both of their games against College of Staten Island, 8-5, and then Goldie Beacom, 12-8. So they are currently 1-4 on this Florida road trip. 2 games were postponed. Not sure if that's because of weather down there in Florida or not, but the games that were supposed to happen yesterday against California, Pennsylvania, and Queens College were postponed. So they have more coming up on Wednesday and Thursday this week, but that brings their season record total up to 6-7. Of course, they've not played any conference games yet, but yeah, still down in Florida, battling it out. They've got Mercyhurst, Southern New Hampshire, Trevecca Nazarene, and Quincy University coming up later this week.
How could we forget about Trevecca Nazarene? Just a beacon of
the volleyball rivalry we sparked with them this year was quite nice.
Wait, did we really?
We played them in volleyball. Yeah, I can't remember.
I forgot about that.
We won it. Maybe it was at the game. I'll pull up the volleyball schedule. I can't remember if that was the game that we won earlier in the season or if it was one that we lost really closely. No, we won it.
Yeah,
we won it 3-1, and I think I ended up watching that game. So yeah, we did play them in volleyball earlier.
Yeah, and Mercyhurst as well. Who could forget? All these Quincy as well. And it is what it is. And I think they've been stacking up some wins, which is nice to be able to get kind of that momentum going a little bit. And obviously, being down in Florida, it helps out. I know it's been nice up in Minnesota, but it's nicer down in Florida right now. And for them just to get these wins under their belts, really cool. I mean, the thing is that we've kind of seen that offense start to come to life a little bit. Which has been good. Of the first kind of 5-6 games of the season, it was a little rough. Things have kind of evened themselves out now. I'm going to call it for, I know they're playing games in St. Cloud, so like they're in the Husky Dome, but like You get to be in Florida. The ball's going to carry a little bit more. Things just, you can be a little more loose. I'm going to attribute it to that a little bit. And overall, yeah, I mean, it's tough to really gauge with, and we talk about this with volleyball. We talk about this with women's soccer. We talk about this with basketball, any sport where they do these non-conference where you play a team from the other side of the country. You have no idea how to gauge if anybody's any good at anything and what these wins mean. So we'll just kind of keep chugging along here. And next week they got or almost 2 weeks from now, they have Central Missouri, Missouri Western, Northwest Missouri. And then at the end of March, March 23rd, 19 days from when we're recording this podcast, is when they'll go to Southwest to take on Marshall. And that's when they'll go down to Marshall to take on Southwest. And that's when we get the season going for the NSIC. And that's when we can really start to get a full-on feel for this team and see how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. So more to come on that in the future, obviously, as we look into the spring sports. Just want to touch quickly before we wrap it up with baseball. Men's golf and women's golf started their spring seasons today. I don't have any stats on that yet, on how good they did, but they are in an invitational. Women are in SMSU Spring Invitational in Litchfield Park, Arizona, and the men are in the Mavericks Spring Invite in Phoenix, Arizona. And then, baseball, they got to win.
Yeah,
absolutely. They played William Jewell over the weekend, March 2nd on Saturday. They won the second game of the doubleheader 8-7. A weird series because they won one of 3 games, and the first game they lost 17, but they were still able to pull out a win later in the series. So 1-13 on the season. So it's kind of about what we expect from baseball. That's we've touched on what baseball's issues are geographically, all that. We're not going to go over that right now, but they're in a tough spot as always. Coming up next weekend is August.
We're not going to talk about the series against Missouri St. Louis. We're just going to
we're going to move on from that one.
And now they get
39. That's all I have to say.
And now you move on from the non-conference opponents to Augustana. And we all know how good they've been historically at baseball. Yes. So you have Augustana. Good luck. March 8th, which is Friday, you got a doubleheader on Saturday and a getaway game on Sunday. And then you go to Winona the next week for a 4-game set. And then you get your first home game series of the season, which is in March 29th. And they might not actually have to move those games. They might not actually have to move them down to Marshall like they typically do.
Right.
They might get a chance to play them on the BSU baseball field, which is crazy, but that's just where it's been this year. So it's interesting. And, the thing about this team is they just haven't, the pitching hasn't quite been there. They've been able to do a little bit in the hitting department, especially when you look at sophomore Jackson Schaefer. He's got a hitting streak going right now. He's had his first career 4-hit game. He went 4 for 5 with a home run. He's recorded a hit in every game of the series. He's had a 9-game hitting streak. He has a .513 batting average, which right now is the highest in the NSIC. His 20 hits are tied for 6th most as well. So there you go. There's the bright spot for baseball. Jackson Schaefer keeping the hitting streak going and this is the biggest thing about baseball that I like people kind of understand, but you have to tell them a few times to get. By the way, Jackson Schaefer, a sophomore from East Minnesota. So the thing about baseball is it is an individual sport that is kind of guised as a team sport in a sense. So it doesn't matter your team is winning or losing by 20. You can't dog an at bat, realistically speaking. It's not like a basketball where they go, he's shooting 3 when they're up. You have no choice but to go with 100% intensity in an at bat. But if you get a double and nobody else does anything, well, it's a team sport, but you need to rely on individuals to kind of do the work as well. It's a very fascinating thing. That's why I love baseball. But so anyways, I just kind of go like Jackson Schaefer has been having a great, so far, he's been one of the best hitters in the conference this season, but you just haven't quite gotten there, because even though it's why in Major League Baseball, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani are two of the greatest baseball players of all time, and they're on the same team, and they lose 90 games, and they put up God numbers every single year. Well, it's just the way that sport works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because, like you said, one guy can't do it all. You gotta get a whole team of athletes in there that can put the ball in play and defend well. So it's a whole mess if you can't
pitch and
yep.
do all that stuff. So, I mean, it is what it is. And we've talked about for a later podcast, we'll talk about kind of the historic struggles. But anyway, all right. I think that's going to do it for this podcast. We will see you guys later on in the week. We're going to talk with Lucas of Beaver territory. Go to the Sanford Center this weekend if you can. If not, support the Beavers any way that's possible, because let's go. They're
MacNaughton Cup champs, baby.
MacNaughton Cup champs. Let's go. Horns down. Let's go. Let's do this thing.
My dog is wagging her tail. She knows too.
She's a puck knower.
Horns down.
Horns.
Absolutely.
Beeves up, horns down. That's where we go with here. All right, we'll see you guys